The screen of my phone lit up at exactly 6:15 on a Thursday evening. It was a message from my older brother. Cole. He was not reaching out to invite me to his upcoming engagement dinner. He was sending a list of degrading demands. Rule number 1. I had to park my heavy-duty work truck at least 3 blocks away from the restaurant so his future in-laws would not see it. Rule number 2. I was to wear long, heavy sleeves to cover the burn scars and tattoos on my arms. Rule number 3. I was ordered to tell his wealthy fiancée and her family that I was an unemployed charity case whom he graciously supported financially. The final line of his text sat at the bottom of the screen, harsh and glaring in the dim light of my office. He typed that I smelled like metal and cheap labor, and that my blue-collar life would completely humiliate him and ruin his one shot at marrying into real money. My jaw locked. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in the back of my throat. I pressed the power button, plunging the screen into darkness, and shoved the phone deep into my desk drawer. I picked up my red drafting pen, smoothed out the massive structural blueprint spread across my table, and went back to work. The next morning, my phone rang before the sun even fully cleared the Pittsburgh skyline. It was my mother, Brianna. She did not call to ask how I was doing. She called to enforce Cole's toxic rules. Her voice dripped with that familiar, sickeningly sweet tone she always used when she was about to ask me to set myself on fire to keep my brother warm. She berated me for ignoring his simple requests. She accused me of being completely selfish and actively trying to sabotage his happiness. She told me that Cole was under a massive amount of pressure at his junior consulting firm, and the least I could do was shrink myself for one evening to protect his image. I leaned against my kitchen counter, gripping the edge of the marble until my knuckles turned white. My mother was the ultimate enabler, a woman who demanded the strongest child sacrifice their dignity to protect the weakest child's fragile ego. But what she did not know, and what Cole desperately tried to hide from everyone, was that his entire life was a fabricated illusion. Cole was drowning in $50,000 of crushing credit card debt. He leased a luxury car he could not afford. He bought designer suits on credit just to stand next to his wealthy fiancée, Alexis, pretending he belonged in her world. His elitism was nothing but a desperate mask for his own massive imposter syndrome. He needed to humiliate me to make himself feel tall. I told my mother I would not be attending the dinner at all. She gasped, launching into a tearful guilt trip about family unity. But I pressed the end call button. I dropped the phone onto the counter and poured my coffee. I did not need to play a supporting role in my brother's pathetic theater production. I was not a struggling, uneducated laborer needing his pity. I was the lead independent steel fabricator for the entire county. Just 3 days prior, my company had secured a $28 million commercial development contract. I earned my life with calloused hands, early mornings, and a brilliant mind for structural engineering. Cole wanted to hide me in the shadows, completely unaware that I was the one building the room he was desperately trying to stand in. A week later, the collision of our two worlds finally happened. Alexis's father, Mr. Bennett, was a heavy industry tycoon whose umbrella corporation funded massive infrastructure projects across the state. Mr. Bennett was a man of the old world. He respected grit, dirt, and tangible results over empty corporate titles. He insisted on a boots-on-the-ground tour of the new massive downtown development site his company was backing. Cole, terrified of looking utterly useless to his future father-in-law, tagged along for the site visit. Cole spent the entire morning desperately pretending to possess deep project management knowledge, nodding along to conversations he did not understand, wearing a pristine hard hat that had never seen a day of actual work. I was already on the site. The air smelled heavily of ozone. wet concrete, and burning steel. I was standing near the foundational pillars, wearing my scuffed steel-toe boots, a high-visibility vest, and a worn-out hard hat covered in union stickers. I was conducting a structural walkthrough with the site foreman. Cole spotted me from 50 yards away, the color completely drained from his face. His panic was instant and visceral. It was not just about me being a supposed trespasser. He was terrified that Mr. Bennett would realize his blue-collar sister knew significantly more about this multi-million-dollar project than he did. To eliminate the threat to his fragile facade, Cole chose aggression. He stormed over, leaving Alexis and her father a few steps behind. Cole aggressively cornered me against a concrete barrier. He raised his voice, loud enough for the executives to hear, demanding to know how I got past the perimeter. He yelled for the foreman to call security and have this trespassing charity case removed immediately. He degraded my labor right there in the dirt, puffing out his chest, completely convinced he was asserting dominance in front of his wealthy future family. Mr. Bennett walked up slowly. He did not look at Cole. He completely ignored my brother's frantic shouting. Mr. Bennett stepped right past the junior consultant, extended his large, weathered hand, and looked me dead in the eye. He greeted me with profound, undeniable respect. He called me by my professional title, thanking me for taking the lead on the $28 million fabrication contract his corporation had just awarded my firm. The power dynamic shifted so violently, it practically sucked the oxygen out of the air. I shook Mr. Bennett's hand, maintaining terrifyingly calm, unbreakable eye contact with my brother, Cole Stommers. The sweat beaded on his forehead. I reached into my vest pocket, pulled out my phone, and calmly opened the text thread without raising my voice, without a single ounce of anger. I read Cole's degrading demands out loud to the group. I exposed the lies about the unemployment. I exposed his disgust for my blue-collar life. Cole's social climbing facade shattered in real time. Alexis took 3 distinct physical steps away from him, her eyes filled with pure, unadulterated disgust. She looked at him not just as a liar, but as a coward who would step on his own blood to climb a ladder. Mr. Bennett simply shook his head. The universal gesture of a powerful man realizing he had almost welcomed a rat into his house. Nobody yelled. Nobody screamed. The silence of their judgment was infinitely more crushing than any insult. Furious, humiliated, and desperate to regain control. Cole showed up at my apartment the following afternoon. He stood in my doorway, feigning a tearful, trembling apology. He played the victim perfectly, claiming the pressure of the wedding had broken his mind. It was a highly calculated trap, and I knew it the moment I opened the door. I invited him inside and offered him a glass of water. When I handed it to him, Cole intentionally fumbled the glass, spilling ice and water down the front of his designer shirt. I gasped, apologizing profusely, and asked to use my laundry room to dry the shirt. Knowing the exact layout of my apartment from when we were kids, he routed himself directly past my home office. He knew I kept my sensitive documents locked inside. I sat on the living room sofa and listened. I heard the faint click of a laminated corporate ID card slipping the strike plate of the cheap interior office door. It was a trick we used as teenagers to sneak into our parents' bedroom. Sweating and panicked, Cole breached the office. He found the massive proprietary blueprints for the $28 million project sitting on my drafting table. Driven by pure vindictive spite, he used his smartphone to photograph every single page. planning to leak the structural designs to a major regional competitor to trigger a breach of contract and ruin my career. He emerged 10 minutes later, his shirt mostly dry, offering one last fake apology before rushing out the door. I walked over to the office. The strike plate on the doorframe was visibly scratched. I did not panic. I did not call the police. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and smiled. I knew the trap he had just walked into. Cole's anonymous email leak went straight to the competitor later that night. He thought he was brilliant. He thought he was untraceable. He failed to realize two critical things. First, the competitor he sent the stolen blueprints to was actually a regional subsidiary entirely owned by Mr. Bennett's umbrella corporation. Second, and far more lethally, Cole used his firm-issued corporate smartphone to take the photos. Cole was a junior consultant who understood white-collar networking, but he was completely ignorant of industrial security. His consulting firm required mandatory mobile device management software on all employee devices. Every single photograph taken on that phone, every email sent, and every file attached was automatically backed up, time-stamped, and logged with precise GPS metadata to the corporate enterprise cloud. Mr. Bennett's security team flagged the watermarked blueprints immediately. Mr. Bennett made exactly one phone call to the senior managing partners at Cole's consulting firm. The digital guillotine fell instantly. An emergency corporate IT audit pulled the metadata directly from Cole's own employee cloud drive. The GPS coordinates placed him inside my apartment. The timestamps matched his visit. The evidence was absolute and undeniable. Cole was immediately terminated for cause. Escorted out of the glass building by 2 armed security guards while his coworkers watched in silence. He was permanently blacklisted from the consulting industry and handed over to federal authorities for corporate espionage. When Cole finally reached his apartment, carrying a cardboard box of his desk supplies, a courier was waiting at his door. The courier handed him a small velvet box and a thick manila envelope. Inside the box was the engagement ring. Inside the envelope was a formal cease and desist letter drafted by the Bennett family's legal team, threatening immediate legal ruin if he ever attempted to contact Alexis again. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was my mother, Brianna. She was calling in hysterics, ready to beg for mercy, ready to demand that I call Mr. Bennett and save her precious son from the consequences of his own actions. I stared at her name on the screen. I pressed the block contact button, setting the phone down in the quiet, peaceful sanctuary of my hard-earned home. The justice delivered to Cole was absolute and entirely institutional. 3 months later, the legal system finalized his ruin. The federal judge sentenced my brother to 3 years in federal prison for corporate espionage and intellectual property theft. With no possibility of early parole, the court also ordered a massive financial restitution that completely wiped out whatever tiny fraction of wealth he had managed to hide. The news of his sentencing quietly made the rounds through our extended family and the Pittsburgh corporate network. The community did not pity him, they shunned him. His name became a cautionary tale about the dangers of unearned arrogance. Months after the trial, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. The return address belonged to the Federal Correctional Facility. It was a letter from Cole. I did not even open it. I knew exactly what it contained. It would be the hollow echo of a narcissist, filled with gaslighting, fake apologies, and demands for sympathy. He would blame the pressure, blame our mother, blame me. A year ago, I would have read it and let the guilt consume me. Today, I walked straight to the kitchen and dropped the unopened envelope directly into the trash. It was the ultimate power move. I felt nothing but a profound, absolute indifference. My life had transformed beautifully. I did not lose a family. I purged a poison. I spent the holidays sitting at a massive mahogany dining table with Mr. Bennett, Alexis, and their extended network of friends and partners. They became my chosen family. They did not ask me to hide my work boots. They did not ask me to cover my scars. They poured expensive wine, raised their glasses, and toasted to the brilliant woman who built the steel foundations of their city. I finally understood what it meant to sit at a table where your presence was celebrated, not tolerated. We are constantly fed the narrative that blood is thicker than water. We are conditioned to believe that just because someone shares your last name, you owe them your silence, your resources, and your dignity. But the truth is much darker. Often, the people who share your DNA are the ones most threatened by your light. Looking back on the wreckage of my brother's life and the incredible peace of my own, I realized this entire ordeal was a masterclass in human psychology. Snobbery and elitism are never actually about class or wealth. They are the heavy armor worn by the deeply, painfully insecure. Cole tried to diminish my labor because he was drowning in the crushing emptiness of his own fabricated existence. My mother demanded I shrink myself because it was easier to sacrifice my boundaries than to confront her golden child's failures. If you are dealing with toxic family members who constantly demand you make yourself smaller to make them feel bigger, I want you to write down these 3 rules and never forget them. Rule number 1, true power does not need to announce itself. If you have to scream at a waitress, degrade a laborer, or demand a VIP table just to prove you belong in a room, you do not belong there. Quiet competence will always outlast loud. Desperate arrogance. Build your life in silence and let your results make all the noise. Rule number 2, forgiveness without absolute accountability is just self-harm. Toxic enablers will always demand that you absorb the abuse to keep the peace. They will call you selfish for walking away. Let them. You have every right in the world to let their chaos completely destroy them while you stay perfectly safe and warm on the shore. Rule number 3, your receipts are your ultimate shield. Never delete the text messages. Never ignore the metadata. Never let a manipulator rewrite history. When the time comes, do not scream. Do not argue. And do not throw a tantrum. Simply step aside. Present the undeniable evidence. And let the villain's own actions become the architect of their complete destruction. We are taught from childhood to endlessly build bridges, to constantly reach out, and to always compromise. But no one teaches us that sometimes the healthiest, most beautiful thing you can possibly do is burn a bridge to the ground and use the fire to light your way forward. Who in your life is desperately asking you to shrink so they can feel big? Who is demanding your silence to protect their fragile ego? Tell me your story in the comments below. And share this message with someone who desperately needs the permission to finally walk away. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why didn't she just explode on him at the construction site? Or why on earth would she just sit on her couch drinking coffee while her toxic brother picked the lock to her office and stole $28 million blueprints? Why not call the police the second she heard the door click? Take a deep breath. Let us break this down. Because what Whitney did was an absolute masterclass in professional, legal, and emotional self-defense. First, let us talk about the psychology of why it took her so long to cut them off, and why she even opened her front door for that fake, tearful apology in the first place. Psychologists call this the slot machine effect, also known as intermittent reinforcement. When you grow up in a highly toxic, enabling family dynamic, you are essentially sitting at a rigged casino game. 99% of the time, they give you nothing but disrespect, crushing guilt trips, and impossible demands. But every once in a while, they drop a crumb of hope, a fake apology, a temporary truce. A brief moment where they act like a real family. You do not stay because you are weak. And you do not stay because you are stupid. You stay because you are psychologically conditioned to hope that maybe, just maybe, this time you will hit the jackpot and finally get the loving family you deserve. Whitney did not just win the contract. She won her life back the second she realized the game was rigged and walked away from the machine. Now, let us get into the street smart analysis, because her execution was flawless. Strategy number 1 is what I call the audit strategy. Manipulators and narcissists absolutely hate hard details. And they hate paper trails. Cole thought he was pulling a fast one. But Whitney understood corporate infrastructure. She did not need to scream, argue, or defend her honor to her mother. She let the corporate mobile device management software do the talking. She knew that in the professional world, data does not care about your feelings. The metadata on that firm-issued phone was the ultimate, undeniable receipt. Strategy number 2 is building the case through absolute silence. This is the hardest thing to do when your blood is boiling. When Whitney saw the scratched lock on her office door, she did not interrupt him. There is a brilliant rule in conflict: never interrupt your enemy when they are in the middle of making a fatal mistake. By letting Cole complete the theft and actually send that email, she elevated his action from a petty sibling dispute over a wedding to federal corporate espionage. She did not just get mad, she got him a 3-year federal prison sentence. Strategy number 3 is the buyout. When her enabling mother called crying, ready to demand even more sacrifices, Whitney simply blocked the number. She invested in her own freedom. Sometimes the absolute highest return on investment you will ever get in your life is the peace of mind that comes from walking away and letting the trash take itself out. The final verdict here is simple. Your dignity is your most valuable asset. And nobody, not even blood, is allowed to bankrupt it to pay off their own insecurities. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into rooms where your immense value is not respected. In the end, Cole did not lose because his sister was cruel. He lost because he mistook silence for weakness. For years, he looked at her boots, her scars, her truck, and decided those things made her small. He wanted her hidden 3 blocks away, wrapped in sleeves, rewritten as a charity case, because her real success exposed the lie he was living. But real power does not need a designer suit. Real power can smell like steel, concrete, and early mornings. Real power can stand quietly on a construction site while everyone else finally sees the truth. Cole tried to humiliate the woman building the very world he wanted to enter. Then, when his mask cracked, he crossed the final line. He stole from her. He lied again. And this time, there was no family excuse strong enough to save him from the evidence. His downfall was not revenge. It was consequence. So remember this: never shrink yourself to protect someone else's fragile image. Never hide the scars that prove what you survived. And never apologize for building a life that makes insecure people uncomfortable. Have you ever been asked to make yourself smaller for family? Tell me your story below. If you have ever had to walk away from a toxic slot machine, drop a comment below and tell me how you finally broke the cycle. Hit subscribe for more real talk strategies. And remember, quiet competence always wins.